when you get too excited about an opportunity,
Yeah.
you oftentimes make assumptions about what people need. And what you need personally is not necessarily what everybody else needs. I do talking about us and the amenities, because I could talk all day long, but if what I'm selling isn't what they need, it doesn't do any good. A lot of times when there's a new trend, people try to jump on it to start with why. But starting with, okay, what's that problem that you're wanting to solve?
What's your biggest design pet peeve?
Designers that design for themselves and not the client.
Hey, welcome to Small Business Spotlight from Business Club. And today's guest on the show is Jennifer Belk. She owns a co-working space called Loom, and that's right in Fort Mill. And I love the way she does it. She brings in a combination of creativity, community, collaboration, and commerce. And that's what I love about what she's doing. And you'll get to know more about on today's podcast. So please enjoy the show and let us know whether you liked it. Thank you. Hey, Jennifer.
Hello.
Good morning and happy Friday.
Thank you.
So how have you been today?
Pretty good. I tend to have very busy, crazy mornings, so this was a nice transition.
Yeah,
so
same here. Been all through the week we've been busy, and podcasts are my time to unwind.
Exactly.
So it's good. So welcome to Business Club.
Thank you.
Business Club with a K for knowledge, and I'm pretty sure that we're going to learn quite a few things from you today.
We'll try.
I'll try. Awesome. So the way it works is we started this series sometime in November, and November 2024, and we've been inviting local entrepreneurs to share their journey, their background, their journey, what do they stand for. So for us, it's been quite a few revelations, and it's been a very, very, very rewarding experience knowing about the likes of you and your journey and what you have to share to the world. So I'm excited to have you on board.
Thank you.
And can't wait to hear your story. So let's just talk a little bit about your background first. I'd love to know where did you start your corporate journey, or your what were you in your previous life before you came to Loom? Where you started Loom, and just give us a little bit background about yourself.
Absolutely. So I went to Auburn University. Started out in architecture. Lasted one day after the intro information session, and one of the biggest things was it was a little too theoretical, building conceptual models and things like that. And I wanted to know who was in the buildings and what those people needed. It doesn't matter how elaborate and impressive the outside of a building is if it doesn't really support the people that are inside and whatever their mission is, personally and professionally. So I ended up changing to a program called Interior Environments, and it was much more user-based. This was the time when the Americans with Disabilities Act was actually the year that I started college was when it was enacted. Green design was just coming out, and so it was a really...
when?
This was 92, and it was really kind of influencing where the design field was going, and that was very interesting to me. So once I graduated, I went immediately into graduate school, but worked at the same time, and was with a firm that did mostly corporate interiors. And what was interesting about that was this was early 90s. The real estate market was going completely crazy as far as rental rates and all of this sort of thing. It was also when different mobile technologies and things started evolving. So corporate interiors, how they were used, started changing a lot. One of our major clients that was international was going to more of a hoteling type of situation, rather
Right.
than if all of your people are out of the office 3 of the 5 days a week, there's no reason to have 10,000 square feet to sit empty
Right.
for half the week, you
Right.
know. And so these kind of innovative, flexible ways to use space, and that's all I've ever known, because that was brewing when I first got out. So a little less of this is how things have always been done.
Yeah.
And I think that was great for our profession. So I finished graduate school. We have a certification exam, like a board exam, similar to what architects do. And so finished that, finished my master's, worked in the industry for a little while longer, and then took on a teaching position.
Oh, wow.
And so taught for about 14 years.
Where did you
at
teach?
the college level. The Art Institute of Charlotte for a few years, and then at Winthrop University, which is the
Winthrop, okay.
only accredited design program in South Carolina. And it was a wonderful experience, and really drove everything that I'm doing now. So,
Oh, wow. That's cool. So what was your aha moment when you said, okay, you want to start something similar? Obviously, your background suits very well into what you're doing today. So what was that aha moment that you had to venture on your own?
One of the things was, you know, when you take those classes in college, and other times just because you need that credit, and
Right.
you're like, why am I here?
Yeah.
Kind of thing. When the co-working thoughts started coming, I understood it as a way for all of those things, all of those jobs that you have just because you need a job.
Right.
You know, what I learned from those started coming together, and it's a perfect combination of what I do from day to day. I had a senior class project in when they're doing their thesis and really kind of individualizing projects, and had heard about co-working. Had the senior class do a co-working project, taking a sitting vacant college building and turning it into kind of an entrepreneurial headquarters
Right.
and flex space. And in the process of that, got jurors together to come evaluate their projects, and really kind of started surrounding myself with a lot of people in entrepreneurial, town development, those kinds of spaces. And it really kind of started getting me jazzed about the concept. Sat in the back of my head for a couple of years. And then one day I was co-working out of a furniture dealership up in Charlotte, because my daughter had art classes next
Oh, wow.
door.
Okay.
And so rather than sitting at a coffee shop,
Yeah.
my friends at the dealership said, well, why don't you just come here, mooch off our coffee and Wi-Fi, and be in a great office environment. And this was Alfred Williams, uptown Charlotte. And
Alfred Williams.
Alfred Williams, they're the Herman Miller and now Knoll
Okay.
dealer, which are two of the big three corporate commercial
Right.
design and furnishings companies. And one day got in a talk with one of the leaders there and told them what I was kind of interested in, and right then and there they said, how can we partner with you on this?
Perfect.
And because I have such a passion for creating environments that are beneficial for people, I couldn't start it out with cheap
Right.
furniture, you know, just make do with
Right, yeah.
IKEA kind of a situation. And that frightened me because of startup costs and everything. So when they came on board, said they would support us, provide furnishings as almost like a satellite showroom.
Yeah. Yeah.
That week, I turned in my resignation, gave up tenure, and haven't looked back. So it really was kind of the surrounding myself with other people that had the mission that kind of told me, yes, we can do this, even though there wasn't anything like that around us. So
Awesome. I know. Let's talk a little bit about your journey into starting the Loom, and then the concept of Loom itself. So can you just explain what does Loom stand for and why the name Loom and all of those and your vision and mission?
That was our very first blog post was why Loom, and even the design of the logo.
Yeah.
The history of Fort Mill is the textile industry,
Yes.
Springs Industries. Every acre was in some way related to them, and so it's kind of
And Springs, you mean?
Yes.
Yeah, okay,
Yes.
okay.
The whole Springs family
Right,
and
yeah.
the manufacturing facilities and everything, as far as it being a mill town. And Loom is kind of an homage to that, but the underlying definition of it is basically taking different people with different talents and passions and that sort of thing that may not understand that they have a lot of shared passion, shared goals within their profession, weaving those together to make something beautiful, functional, different, and that sort of thing. So that's kind of the underlying, and you can see that in our logo and everything. So that's kind of the underlying.
So
factor.
weaving them together. That's awesome. Okay. So it's first of its kind in the York County. What gap did you see that prompted you to start something like this?
Personally, I live in the Baxter community.
Okay, you do.
And absolutely love it. Very family oriented. But was sitting there one day and realized that I think the 5 houses around me, there was at least one person that was working from home.
Okay.
And which is great with people mowing the lawn and
Yeah,
all of that kind of thing, dogs barking.
Yeah.
And just kind of started putting feelers out there, just on the neighborhood Facebook group saying, who works from home? How does it work for you? What doesn't work? What do you miss about being in
Office.
a corporate environment and that kind of thing? And I mean, overnight, it was responses. I mean, overnight had over 50 people chiming in, and some of them making coffee dates with each other. I didn't know you work from home. Oh, I do too, and that sort of thing. And one of the things that I have always noticed about the entrepreneurial community is when you get too excited about an opportunity, you oftentimes make assumptions about what people need. And what you need personally is not necessarily what everybody else needs. And so that was a lesson.
It was more
to
like an
me.
informal survey.
It was. It was all types of things that I never even thought about. And because market research meant nothing in York County, and at the time there weren't any other suburban co-working communities, it really kind of shook the Etch-a-Sketch and said, all right, well, we need to take those assumptions out of your head and really see what do people in our area, in our situation, even with the diversity of professional concentrations, everybody that lived there, like I said, a little more family oriented, really wanting the work-life balance because everybody's got kids down there. It's a different, less of the, I call it a Red Bull atmosphere, where it's all techies and staying up and being at the space 24/7, the having a keg in the environment, that kind of thing. We have a bottle of beer that's been in our refrigerator for about 4 years, and it's a different animal in the burbs. And so that kind of starting from scratch, hometown market research rather than looking at numbers was totally imperative. And that really, we started out in an existing smaller building, smaller than what we knew we needed, while another was being built. We moved next door, vacated this. 6 months later, realized we needed that back because of what people were coming to us asking for. We were having bar classes, which is a low impact exercise class. And in our formal gallery, using stools as the dance bar. You know,
Right,
we're
right,
like,
right.
okay, well, we can make this work for a little while, but we need an environment that's better for this, for kids' activities like the chess club, for arts classes, which is my passion, for music, all of these sorts of things that don't fit in a corporate environment. So we got that building a year later, we renovated, and everything was kind of a response to
The demand, growing
the
demand.
demand and these, I hate telling people no. I like trying to figure out how we can meet that need. And so that really drove our expansion, our renovation, any changes we made, multi-purpose environments and that sort of thing. So,
Awesome.
and it's continued to do that over the last 9 years, really changing some of our programming, purchases that we make, that sort of thing.
Cool. So obviously, you had your own challenges of building that. So can you just walk us through what are the challenges that you faced, and what did you do differently to overcome it, especially during COVID times and things like that?
Oh, gracious, yes.
So I would love to know more your story and how did you overcome those challenges?
Absolutely. So one of the things, space is the biggest. I mean, real estate is difficult. And so finding a building that was not just conducive, but supportive of our environment. I knew we kind of had the top 5. Parking, huge. We're the only private parking lot in downtown Fort Mill. So that was huge. Natural light. I wanted to be kind of within eyeshot of Main Street so that there was a tie to the community, and we would be
culture,
and supporting local restaurants and retailers and things like that, which our members get discounts at, and really kind of encouraging that. Open environment, not restricted by an existing layout of the space, and proximity to those we were wanting to serve. So that was kind of the things that drove us. So we probably went through test fits on about 8 different buildings to really try to find the most appropriate, and it ended up being one that wasn't built yet. So that really helped us to be able to, starting off in that smaller building was kind of, they were the test monkeys, and watching how people, you see somebody stack up books on a table and you're like, well, maybe we need more standing desks. And you just seeing how people utilized and morphed and made this space fit for them really drove what we did in our permanent building. And that was a great experience, again, to not make assumptions about what they needed. Type thing. So that was a challenge at first. The other was just, I'd say 80% of our marketing was not Loom marketing, it was co-working marketing, because it wasn't a familiar concept. Those that were familiar with the WeWorks, and more kind of an officing type of environment that didn't really address the other needs.
Like
people.
the arts and crafts and all of that stuff.
The arts, the social aspect
of
of it, the programming aspect, and the customization. That's one thing I love about us being a one of, is if we need a piece of equipment, I go buy a piece of equipment. Rather than having to, address corporate and ask permission and,
your own boss,
that sort of thing. And being able to be that flexible and reactive to the members' needs, I think is what kind of drove our development and helping people understand that co-working is more than having a desk or having an office, that it's really kind of the whole of the amenities and the benefits and that sort of thing. So marketing was interesting. It was a lot more meeting at Hobos for lunch with people that are kind of in your scenario and just kind of complaining and talking about the situation and what their challenges and that sort of thing, and some of those became our very first members, and some are still with us 9 years later.
Wow.
And they really drove the culture. I didn't have to do a lot of that because they became
Your ambassadors.
the ambassadors, but also new people come in and they see how the existing members really took ownership of the space and how they treated each other, and it kind of became that's what the expectation is.
Right.
So it took a lot of weight off my shoulders, to kind of create that culture within the space.
Awesome. So, and obviously COVID hit, and then, so that was probably another challenge that you had.
It was just under 4 years from when we opened our doors.
Yeah.
And because so much of our business is not just about a desk, it's about meeting spaces and teaching spaces and things like that, we took a major hit, obviously, in 1 week. All events, all meetings, everything fell off. But as far as kind of our other two concentrations and revenue didn't change. The members that we had never left.
Okay.
Some of the ones whose situations are moving or, life changes, because there's always a little bit of turnover. We're a very transient kind of community. But I had some that, never missed a day. We also have right now about 50 virtual members, basically mailing addresses, having somewhere to have private meetings, having a Google presence, that sort of thing. And because that's kind of like being a post office, we never closed. So we never stopped going and had to continue to support those people. Their needs didn't just fall off the face of the earth like everything else did. And so that was great as far as having consistency and not having to kind of rebuild that when we started coming out
Makes
of
sense.
COVID. And then as far as events and co-working, it was, morphing the space, whether that was kind of deconcentrating the environment, barriers between workspaces, lowering the caps on our event spaces for distancing, things like that, and providing that kind of reassurance, daily sanitizing of the building, because it is so much of a shared work environment. And so that was, it was challenging, but we had people that were, regular meeting renters and things that as soon as stuff cleared, they were back in, and we just kind of hit the ground running with how we had done things. So,
Perfect.
So it was nice to be able to not have such a lag in rebuilding. Because we did have a little bit of time before.
Okay.
So.
Cool. So talk to me a little bit about your culture and the culture that you'd like to, have the members get involved in and things like that. So usually in places like this, you have to have meeting of the minds too, because you can't be co-working with somebody who's very hostile and things like that. So just talk to me a little bit about that.
And we call it an office without the drama. Because nobody works for each other.
Right,
We have some small teams, but you're not sitting next to somebody who you're vying for a promotion against and that sort of thing. And it's been interesting. It's like when your kid has a friend that you don't like, and you're like, well, if I tell them not to hang out with them, they're going to want to hang out with them more, and so you just kind of let it fix the problem. And we have maybe 3 people over the last 9 years who came in, and either because of personality or because the work environment just wasn't conducive to a really specific need that they had, it kind of fixed itself. They realized that it wasn't as much of a fit, and didn't stay very long, so it didn't disrupt that, and it kind of fixed itself, which was nice. The members that have been there the longest have really driven the culture.
Okay.
Because they are the ones that if they see somebody in the break room they don't recognize, I don't have to go facilitate the
conversation.
connection.
Yeah, okay.
They start that water cooler talk and immediately start finding things.
Yeah, that's so important. Yeah.
It is, and they have driven that. They have obviously, we love people bringing their friends and being those marketing people for us, but even just the kind of family atmosphere of it. By 4:30, 90% of our people are gone. Because they're picking up their kids, they're going to soccer practice, and that's kind of one of our underlying goals. It's kind of like a forced work-life balance. You have a 7-minute drive to work, so just long enough to put my other hat on, and get into the work mode of thinking. Go in, crank it for 8 or 9 hours, and then go home. Take my laptop home, but not my charger. So just in case, I can get on there, but I can't work for a long time, And that's our goal for them, is that they really make the most of the work that they're doing so that they can spend time on the things that count. And new members that come in see that, we know each other's kids. We know each other's spouses.
It's like a family.
It is, and when you meet somebody, you think about the resources and the connections that they have, but they have spouses who work out in the community that become who we refer people to. They go to certain churches or certain gyms, or their kids are in soccer together or whatever. And when you look past just the faces that you see every day, it expands your network professionally and personally. The number of babysitters I have set people up with, because when your nanny cancels, your business suffers,
That's true.
And
That's
so it
true.
doesn't seem like a professional courtesy, but
it is a need.
it is. And when you're juggling and wearing the parent hat and the professional hat, anything on that side that's not working well is going to affect your professional life. So so that sort of personalized, I really love that they feel a sense of ownership to it. I've caught some of them giving tours before because I wasn't sitting at the front desk and they just start doing it. And I love that. I want them to have a sense of ownership to it. So, and that has meant loyalty and friendships and that sort of thing. So
cool. So let's talk a little bit about your community, art, and creative impact that you've created. So Loom, from what I understand and what you just explained, it's not just about Workspace. It's about creating a community at art gallery for events and other spaces. Talk to me a little bit about that and what that means to you and what that means to the members and to the community at large.
One of the things when I was teaching that I really noticed was students in a creative area don't get a lot of business training, even though when you get out you spend half your time on marketing and sales and that sort of thing. And the other thing that I learned is art is not as accessible as it should be to those that are not artists or born art appreciators. There are certain people that are never just going to wander into a gallery, but we intentionally surround them with a gallery. And so people that normally wouldn't have exposure are getting that exposure. They're coming to an HOA meeting or to a church service or a music recital, and they're getting that exposure. So, an artist who displays in a private gallery might have just a few people coming in day to day, but ours, over the course of a week, you may have hundreds of people come in
Yeah, that makes
contact with
sense,
your
yeah.
art. So that's one thing. And as far as space, everything takes space. You know, whether it is, we have a music teacher that's been with us for 7.5 years, and she was working for a music school. They closed down, and they were like, well, you can teach from people's houses and you get this kind of thing.
Right, yeah.
And that's a horrible use of time because
Yeah,
you're
it's
schlepping
community,
everywhere.
yeah.
People have out-of-tune pianos, you know, and you're a 30-year-old beautiful young lady, you're not comfortable being
Right.
in random people's houses. And so she called me. We built her a trolley for her piano so that we could take a room that's the podcast studio during the week, and in the afternoon she rolls her piano out and
Nice.
does her thing. And again, it's looking at what are their needs and how can a space. Podcast studio's got great acoustics.
Right, yeah.
It has a great buffer to other meeting
Yeah.
spaces. We can have Zumba going on in this room and have classes over here. And just trying to jump in and figure out, even not display space, but what can our teaching space. We have watercolor classes on Sunday afternoons, and even like individual dance practice for competitions, and temporary spaces for artists and creatives,
Right.
and that sort of thing. And people don't think about creatives as business people and the challenges that they have to do that, and space is one of the biggest ones. So that's just been really interesting and fulfilling. And we have receptions for the artists. We host the town's kids art competitions that they have for the anniversary of the town, or the stormwater project,
Right.
All of these sorts of things where people are coming in and they're getting ribbons and, all of that sort of thing for the kids,
Terrific.
which then fosters the importance of the arts in our community. Fort Mill just got approved by the town to apply to be a South Carolina cultural district.
Oh, wow.
So
Okay.
kind of like a historic district, but it's geared towards all sorts of arts and culture and that kind of thing. So there's about 10 in South Carolina. Rock Hill is one, and between the town and the Arts Council of York County and their support, we've gotten that approved, and we've got some super involved people that have created a board and are applying for that, and hopefully grants towards murals and public art and festivals and things like that. So it's a group effort, but it's nice to see some priorities changing within the community.
So you're basically creatively embedded in the society and the community.
Absolutely, and like I said, exposing people that wouldn't be exposed to those experiences.
Terrific. So, is there any story, memorable story that you would like to, share with the audience, where Loom as a company actually helped, say, someone help them grow personally or professionally?
I think probably the best, we have, his name's Wes Dees. He runs a company called Providential Student Housing, and how he grew in his way at the space started as a co-working member. He was consulting and wanted to do two things. Wanted to create his own business and also start a podcast, because there was no content for he would meet people at conferences and professional development things, and they would all say, there's no content, I feel stale, I feel uninformed, that sort of thing. And so he started one. Because there was no content out there, he got sponsorships like immediately. He did an amazing job. Started hosting his own little conferences and things like that. Started doing some hiring. We helped facilitate that teamwork, but at a point he needed a permanent
Setup.
space with the lighting, with everything.
Yeah.
He helped us set up our podcast studio and, experimenting with equipment and that sort of thing. And he ended up getting his own space in Rock Hill,
Wow.
setting that up.
Okay.
He still keeps a presence in Fort Mill,
Okay.
but works with universities for their on and off campus housing, make them more supportive and conducive for student growth and safety and all of that
Right.
sort of thing. And his family is still a huge part of our culture and our family, and we see them, they come in to get stuff notarized, I've been to, a kid's performance and had prom pictures taken with, all those sorts of things. And even though he's been gone physically for several years now,
Still you have the connection.
he is and a resource. They're very involved in the homeschool community, and so we've had some of the events, gatherings for their cohort of homeschoolers, and I think that's one of the things that we try to do, and why we have so many nonprofits, organizations, churches, things like that call us home, is we try to be a one-stop shop for things. And AKA, the alumni chapter of AKA in Fort Mill, chartered out of our space, like right after we opened. And those women are involved in everything, professionally, philanthropically, every nonprofit you can think of, they're on the board of. And it makes me exhausted thinking of all the things that they do for our community. And in the process of that, they've had health and wellness events. They do monthly youth leadership training, and then their own kids' birthday parties and their parents' anniversary party. And so, they came in as that cohort, that organization, and in the process, one of them goes to a church that needs rehearsal space for the band and, all of this sort of thing. So we have people that for the last almost 9 years we've been the go-to. And I love that because you're not starting from scratch. They already know what to expect.
Right.
They know not only the spaces, but they know us.
Right.
And that, I'll get a text that says, hey, do you have availability on XYZ date? And we can go with it, and I can give a thumbs up, and then we take care of the details. And I love that. We absolutely love having new people come in, but the heart of it is who are the people in these organizations and how can we meet all of their different needs.
Yeah.
So
terrific. And you obviously support causes and passions and talents beyond professional goals, right?
Mm-hmm,
So any particular individual or company that comes to your mind that have done really, apart from this gentleman who we talked about, who really stood out and have gone beyond their reach? We
had a young lady when we first started, and influence on Fort Mill it was her personal development and how she affected our culture.
Right.
Brittany Young was her name, and really go-getter, never met a stranger, young African-American lady, and she's certainly the minority in the Fort Mill community. She jumped in, helped me at a festival at our booth talking about what is co-working. Yeah, the Strawberry Festival. You'd catch her out back playing basketball with one of the other members. She almost immediately held her very first Lunch and Learn, a free educational event. Just really dove in and was, like you said, an ambassador.
Yeah.
But also helping to create the culture in that. And she got some certifications under her belt and picked up and moved to Tennessee and started her company. And, we've missed her for the last, 7 years. But it was such an example the first couple of years of, this is why we're here.
Right.
And she was new to Fort Mill. Everybody's new to Fort Mill.
Yeah.
So I've always said that co-working, or at least ours, is like an adult student union building.
Makes sense.
I mean, you go to the student union building not just because the Wi-Fi in the dorm is horrible, or your roommate is annoying, or you fall asleep on your bed while you're trying to study, that sort of thing. That's when you go to the student union. But you need meeting space. You just need the hum of people. You need, resources, whatever that happens to be. And that doesn't stop when you graduate. And there's such a gap, I think, when you start adulting in that kind of community. And universities are very intentional about freshman orientation,
right,
and leadership development and internship placement and that sort of thing. It's just the adult version of that. And Brittany coming in was just the avatar of what that should look like.
Yep. Awesome. Mm-hmm. Let's talk a little bit about industry insights and trends. Remote work obviously has trended for the last 5 years or so, especially during and after COVID.
Mm-hmm.
How do you see co-working spaces evolve over the next 5 years?
As far as what we've seen, I think more corporate workers. A lot of times when people think about co-working, they think just about entrepreneurs,
right,
and indie workers and consultants and the gig economy type of thing. Mm-hmm. And I think what we've seen mostly is, in the last few years, is people that work for national, international companies who need a home base now that they are 100% remote.
Right. Yeah.
We have several teams that have all gone remote, have gravitated towards this area. They're based in Florida, but a lot of their hiring has happened, and they need 1 day a week to come together and mind meld and have a 75-inch TV to Zoom to the big boss down in Florida and that sort of thing. People that, we've always said can't do their work at Starbucks and Panera and that sort of thing because of HIPAA regulations, because of needing somewhere to spread out all of your techie stuff that you're taking apart. And we have some people that are in, engineering related to water purification and solar panels and all of this sort of thing. So I'll come in and there's pieces and parts of things everywhere. You can't do that, in a public place. And so I think the variety of the members has changed, the teaming that's been done, and really kind of bringing to the front the things you can't do at home because it's unprofessional,
right,
in a public place, that sort of thing. And so I think that's what I've seen the most. I don't know if that's a trend everywhere, but it's certainly something that we have noticed. And as far as globally, you see a lot more kind of specialized co-working places, whether that's ones that are specifically for female entrepreneurs, or specifically for people who want to bring their dogs to work, or ones that have daycare centers attached to them, and really trying to focus, now that there are more co-working places, trying to focus towards the specific needs of a specific
set of,
whether it's a geographical area or similarities or whatever the industry is in that town. And so that's probably what I've seen as far as the industry as a whole,
right,
and just awareness of co-working, obviously. So
So there are a lot of bigger corporations in this WeWork and Industries being a couple of them. So what sets Loom apart from these two big giants or several of those giants?
I think one of the biggest things is I would not want to function anywhere but Fort Mill. People have come to us over the years about franchising and that sort of thing, and I would really have to find somebody who's super plugged in Matthews or super plugged in some other area, because that's
the
my
culture.
and that's my main thing is knowing what's going on in the Fort Mill area, and even where the schools are being built, and where people are hanging out to get work done, and that sort of thing. And it's nice, like I said, to be flexible with how we lay out the space, the amenities that we have, the events that we have, and being able to do that at the local level is huge for us. You walk in most corporate places and you would have no idea where you are. They look exactly the same no matter where they are. And, that's economy of scale. And I've worked in that industry where we had 100 different banks across the U.S. that pick, color scheme A, B, or C. And, that's your customization. Whereas, between the local art, between the pictures of our members on the wall, between the flyers for the Fort Mill Historic walking tour, and the where you are,
right?
And by the people, as well as the environment and the tie to the community. And so as we have thought about expanding or changing our space, it will never go out of the radius of
Fort Mill.
Original Fort Mill, because that's what we are.
That's what you stand for. Awesome. And how do you balance sustainability, community engagement, and profitability in your business model?
Multifunction. Every space serves a lot of different purposes, and part of that has been facilitated by the family atmosphere and the fact that people do leave at 4 or 5 o'clock, and then we can, I believe in wheels, roll the furniture out of the way, and 2 nights a week we have Krav Maga classes in. I told them as long as they don't bleed on anything, we're good.
Till what time does it go?
They usually come in about 6:30, be there for about an hour and a half, do their thing, and some of them are in other ways tied to our community. Their wife is an artist that displays or does photography at the space and that sort of thing. Band practice after hours, like I said, HOA meetings, things like that. And every space has to be able to serve different uses. We do a lot of school testing. So
school testing,
online schools, homeschool communities, things like that. They still have to do like end of term, SAT, face-to-face proctored things. And when you don't have a physical school, where do you do that? And they're usually regional, so it'll be like the upstate Low Country Connections Academy. All last week we're in our space. Big testing room, small testing room for kids that need special accommodations, check-in and admin space, and then at night move everything around to serve some other purpose. So as far as the sustainability and us being able to keep our prices down, we say keep your head high and your overhead low. Being able to do that is facilitated by the space serving so many purposes. So that's been huge.
Awesome. Let's talk a little bit about the education, design, and consulting side of things. So you've been a professor, a contributor to educational publications, and a design consultant. So how do you weave those experiences into creating the Loom that you've created?
We also have a construction management company that my husband started 13 years ago. And so certainly the background, one of the things that I find I spend a lot of time doing is just observing the people in the space. You know, how they work, where they work, like I said, how they kind of morph, the things they ask for,
Right.
and watching that, and then trying to figure out, okay, how can the physical environment affect what they're doing professionally, concentration, communication, that type of thing. So that's been huge. When I was teaching, I mostly taught the upper level corporate space planning of corporate environments, and also like the professional practices classes, which has to do with entrepreneurship, has to do with, you know, starting your business. What do you need to start your business? Who you need to surround yourself with? Writing resumes, you know, and I find myself doing a lot proofreading, you know, helping people proofread their new employment contracts, you know, because I'm a totally unconnected third party, that sort of thing. And so I find myself doing a lot of the things that I did for the students with our professional members. So that's been a definite advantage to what I do every day. Cool. Also seeing that when you're in education, not everyone needs the same things.
Yeah.
You know, one size doesn't fit all. And the more that you get to know students, the more that you get to know their background, what skills they have, what their passions are beyond the classroom. And that's how I always was. And so trying to do that with the members or potential members or things that come in, you know, I spend as much time talking to them when they first come in as I do talking about us and the amenities, because I could talk all day long, but if what I'm selling isn't what they need, it doesn't do any good. So I'm like, let's have a little assessment, and then I don't need to talk about all of this. You need this sort of thing. And so I think customizing that just like you would a lesson plan or a study schedule for a kid.
Right.
It's a similar thing. That assessment and helping them with the resources that they need. So that certainly affected. And like I said, I mean, every little random job, you know, that I've had over there's something that you can get from that.
To bring that together.
To bring that together. Nothing's wasted. So.
Of course, every day is a new learning, and then make use of all this learning to, you know, create.
The older I get, the more I realize how much I don't know. And but surround that whole, you should never be the smartest person in the room.
Right.
Totally believe that. And sitting at work, I am not, because I'm surrounded by, you know, people with doctorates in analytics and things like that, and I'm listening to them going, I have no idea what you're saying, you know.
Absolutely.
But I learn a lot.
So, being that you're from a design architectural background, what kind of design elements do you bring in to the Loom experience to improve productivity and collaboration?
Ergonomics is huge. Like I said, the first consideration I had, even before we started looking for a building, was the furnishings. You know, making sure that we had the highest quality and most well-designed seating and options, you know, whether it's low seating, high seating, soft seating, outdoor, you know, the connection with the outdoor. Vitamin D is essential to your brain working and that sort of thing, and the connectivity to downtown. You know, get out, walk, bring some of your best thinking, you know, comes when you're pacing out in the sunshine. And so whether that is, you know, the building that we selected or the furnishings or just giving options within the space so that the members can choose what's most, you know, do you need to spread out? Do you need to face a wall so that, you know, you're not distracted by anything? I'm visually distractible. I can handle sound all over the place, but if I got to do a Excel spreadsheet, I'm going to be looking at a wall, you know, and I know that other people might not. I don't necessarily know that about every person in our space, but if we provide all the different options, then they can make the decision about what is most conducive to what they're doing. So that's mine. And like I said, just noticing and reacting to. I hoard cords. I have every kind of adapter known to man for every kind of computer, for every kind of monitor, you know, because that's, I mean, if you've ever sat down to do a Zoom call and then realized that you don't have whatever it is.
Yeah, it takes the
you have that panic. And I've had people on a Zoom call, they see their battery going down and they don't have, and they're putting themselves on, you know, I'm running around finding, you know, whatever it is, and if that takes the stress out of them, makes them look more professional to the boss and that sort of thing, then you know, that's the environment and the amenities being customized immediately, you know, to whatever their need is. So
awesome. I'm sure you worked with a lot of nonprofits in the past, and probably there were some you know, opportunities where you had to do some pro bono activities. So how has that changed your approach to doing business?
One of the things, so we've always given a nonprofit discount, that sort of thing. And luckily, again, because we're one of, I can determine what a nonprofit is. You know, even if you're a corporation, if you're doing something that's for specifically in the community, not for your gain, you know, that's a nonprofit to me. Within about 6 months of us opening, we had a church approach us about just meeting space for services, and we created what we called our community partner program. So those are mostly nonprofits, churches, teachers, things like that call us home, and that we provide not only deep discounts, help with social media promotion for any, you know, if they're having a membership drive or they're having a fundraiser or they're having whatever, to assist them with that, so that our greater community are aware of what they're doing. And just supporting with the spaces. So our first community partner was it's called Faith Connections Ministries, and they started in our small event space. Then they moved up to our largest event space. Then they took both buildings so the kids could have, you know, children's church over here and run around and, you know, act crazy. Then they started having, you know, women's retreats and youth weekend activities or sleepovers or, you know, things like that. So kind of adding their services without having a whole lot of extra overhead. And it really wasn't until they were with us for 5 years, something like that, until COVID really kind of got its claws in. And it really wasn't until they needed their own building like 4 days a week that they were like, okay, it's time. And they were our first graduates. And now, you know, they had their own building. And that's our goal. It's we hate losing people, but if it's because
they're graduating to a new
they're graduating to a new space, or you know, just growing in a way that either we can't accommodate anymore, or it's just time for them to get on their own feet. Also, just helping people to take risk. You know, maybe they had a ministry that was just, you know, meeting in somebody's living room, and said, okay, this is when we need to have a more professional or organized presence in the community. I love helping people take risk in what their other hat is. I had a lady who was a public school teacher, always wanted to teach dance lessons. She'd always wanted to do it. didn't want to invest in a studio and
Right.
sign a lease and all that sort of thing. She came in. We always have them have, you know, a class or two, see how it goes before we make any kind of commitment to each other.
Right.
She had one class, and she came to me and she said, I love my child. I do not like other people's children. And she discovered that after one class with no risk, no, you know, startup costs, no any of that, but ended up doing like private dance coaching
Okay.
and things with really serious students, but she never would have known that if she didn't try it.
Right, absolutely,
And even
yeah.
though she didn't necessarily stay with us, that was so just enriching to me.
Yeah.
And really helping me to see the possibilities again of how we can accommodate people, organizations, churches, whatever, to try this new venture without having the fright and the investment and that sort of thing. So, and that's similar whether it's a 100-person church or a one-person entrepreneur trying to work something new. And so we do try to keep, as far as nonprofits and such, our prices low, predictable, all-inclusive. So you're not, you have to rent this furniture and that furniture. Everything you need is right there.
Right there.
And unless you need linens or need something like that, you know what you're getting into. Not putting too many restrictions on people. When I worked at the university, they have a catering contract, state contract. You can't have a pizza party for your students. You have to cater through them. And that was always so restrictive. It was always the biggest part of the budget for, student events. And so when we started this, I was like,
no.
If you want to potluck something, if
Go
you want
for
to
it.
get food donations from people, whatever, I'm not going to put those kinds of restrictions. Really, the only thing we have is you're not allowed to have glitter for an event. Because
it's difficult.
Glitter is evil. But outside of that, we say unless it's illegal or immoral, we will host it. And we've had such a range of things that you can't do. The public spaces, like in communities, like a community center, you aren't allowed to do anything faith-based there because it's basically publicly funded. School facilities that rent out on the weekends, you can't do anything faith-based there.
Right.
A lot of people don't allow art events or children's events, things like that. And so trying to fill that gap for people that are just like, where do I go for doing this? We had a educational series on different religions. Not for a recruitment kind of scenario, but there was a professor that was going for tenure, needed to do presentations, really had a passion for educating the public, and she did a series. It was like Islam 101. Judaism 101 kind of thing. And a lot of senior citizens came because the world has opened up so much, and whereas when they were younger they weren't exposed to a lot of things. And she couldn't find a place to host her session because nobody would do it. And
that's amazing.
I was like, there's so many events we have that I go to because I would want to know those things, and I think they're beneficial, and I think it's understandable in some ways, but it's sad that people that have events or passions kind of out of the norm don't have a venue and an outlet to do that. So and that's been exciting, just the variety of different things that we've had.
That's awesome. You definitely stand out. So congratulations to that.
We have fun.
We have fun. So looking back, what are some of the challenges or any that's one failure that you thought actually shaped the way you are today, or not necessarily failure, like a lesson learned?
We made such a concerted effort with choosing the most appropriate building. I do not like debt, and that was my goal when we opened. I wanted it to be
Profitable from day one.
I wanted it to be profitable, but we just don't like debt at all, my family. And I also wanted it to be a solo venture, just my husband and I. We didn't want to take on a lot of partners and things like that, because we knew we wouldn't be able to drive it
the way
like we
want,
needed to, and would be kind of stuck in a particular format,
right?
That sort of thing. And because of that, we leased a space, and it's been an amazing space, but it's a lease. And I would have loved to have been able and been at a place to start, own it, have control of the overall environment and that sort of thing. And it hasn't hurt us business-wise. Personally, I would just love to have that, that investment there. It has allowed us, like I said, when we started, and then we moved to another building, and then we took this back on, and it's allowed us that flexibility, being a renter rather than owning the building. But that's probably something that I would have tried to do differently, without going into a whole lot of debt. And that's probably the biggest thing looking back now.
You would have done, okay. So what advice would you give someone who's looking to start a co-working space today, given the fact that the challenges that you've gone through, especially during COVID times and things like that? So,
I would say kind of putting those assumptions aside, because I think every site, every town has completely different opportunities and issues and concerns. That I think would be the biggest thing, not to rush it. A lot of times when there's a new trend, people try to jump on it, and the Simon Sinek book,
start with the why.
To start with why, not say, I want to open a co-working community because it's a trend. Most don't realize the time. They think it's a building, you give people keys and it happens, and it doesn't. But starting with, okay, what's that problem that you're wanting to solve? And then what's the widget, that you're doing? I think that's one of the biggest things. And then I'm an extremely independent person, but starting this brought me down a little bit to be able to ask for help. There were a couple of co-working communities that started 6 months before we did in the Charlotte area, and I say they became my much younger big brothers in the process. Observe co-working out of their spaces. Advent Co-working and Huga up in Charlotte, they gave me copies of rental contracts. They, helped me decide on what our door access system with an app, what that was going to be. Just general helping to choose our member management system, billing, that sort of thing. That when you're starting and you've never done anything like this, some things you don't even know you need to look for.
Right.
And just being in those conversations, attending their events, that sort of thing was huge. And having to put, take my professor cap off and act like I don't know anything, was difficult at first. But once I did, it was huge. And it took so much uncertainty out of everything I did.
The load away, because you really are looking up to someone who just started and they've gone through the experience and is implementing it.
It's fresh. They've got complaints. They've got victories. They've got those sort of things. And it was huge to really set my pride aside and say, you know, we don't know what we're doing yet. So, you know, learn from them.
Right,
you know.
absolutely, yeah. When somebody has gone through the journey, why reinvent the wheel?
Exactly. Well, and on the opposite side of that, seeing the differences, you know, because, Advent Co-working, they had a much younger demographic, you know, not as much the family atmosphere, the types of events,
Right.
very different. So attending those and then thinking, okay, well, who's been coming to our meetups
Yep.
in Fort Mill? Would this work? Would that work? Yeah,
Right,
that
right.
sort of thing, and trying to tailor the experience for them differently.
Yeah.
You
Makes
know,
sense.
but if they weren't in such a good place and so involved and growing, then I wouldn't have been able to think about that.
Right.
So whether it's emulating or
Right.
defining why you're different,
Yep.
that observation and counseling
Right.
and everything is so advantageous.
Yeah. So when I look at this, your endeavor, I look at the triple C approach: creativity, community, and commerce.
Collaboration.
Collaboration
Uh-huh,
too, yeah.
uh-huh.
And for me, everything is a K, right? K for knowledge.
Yeah. Oh, I love a good alliteration. It's, yeah.
Right. So if somebody were to do something like this, where do they start?
I think you have to be part of the community already, or at least take the time
Yeah.
to become part of the community. Setting aside those assumptions, yes, doing your research, but I had never worked out of a coffee shop before.
yeah.
As a professor, I had an office,
Yeah.
but I used to always pick up and just go work at the student union building for the hum
Right.
of things. When we started kind of formulating this, I went and hung out at Starbucks a lot and kind of took notes on what I didn't like, you know, or watching people ask a complete stranger to watch their stuff while they went to the bathroom.
Right.
Groups of teenagers coming in, not being able to have multiple monitors, which I've got monitors everywhere in our space. All of those sorts of things, observing that. We have a recurring member who's a huge part of our downtown community that I met about a year before we opened, sitting at Starbucks. And I could see his like internal eye rolling happening at every, you know, small child, that sort of thing. And so we started a conversation, and he actually ended up buying a space that had some private offices, which we're a collaborative community
Yeah.
with small private meeting rooms, but we don't have private offices. So when we had somebody that came to us, and in talking to them, realized you really need, because of HIPAA regulations,
Right.
or because you know, edit music videos all day,
Yeah.
that sort of, you need then Thomas became our resource for that. He worked out of our space for a while. Now he has his own larger space in a larger, like, He-Man environment. So that that observing before we opened was
made sense.
yeah, because I was a little, coming from academia, I did feel a little disconnected from
Right.
the real world. And so that time hanging out at Starbucks and Panera, and that was huge.
Awesome. So how important, according to you, is mentorship and networking, especially in today's entrepreneurial space?
Well, the other co-working communities, like I said, was huge for me personally. I have something, I call it creative eavesdropping.
Creative eavesdropping. Okay.
Creative eavesdropping. So, you know, you're in the space. Everybody takes their conference calls out in the open unless it's
Right.
confidential. You got the water cooler talk, that sort of thing. Just yesterday, I
Yeah.
had 2 teams that meet at our space, and they happened to be there the same time. Somebody was walking to get coffee, and they heard something about, like, the water purification systems that somebody was working on. They got a new project, completely not a competitor of, but in the same space.
Right.
And they came up, who's that guy over there? Can you introduce us? I'm like, yeah. I go and slip a note under the conference room door saying, don't leave when you finish your meeting. They come out, we connect them, they spend an hour.
Awesome.
Who knows what's going to come from it?
Yeah.
It may just be,
Yeah,
friendships. It may be a collaboration.
Yeah.
You don't know. We have a couple of people that have done like the analytics, helping someone with the analytics and the market research behind something they're trying to do. It may not go any further than that.
But at least you have helped them connect.
Yeah, and especially for all these people that never actually see their coworkers, because they're in DC
Right.
or somewhere else. Having that, hey, let's sit down and have a cup of coffee and use my skills to help you and vice versa.
That's huge.
It's huge, and I feel like so much more fulfilling because you've got that connection. You can continue after you aren't even, associated professionally anymore,
Right.
to watch them grow. And they're going to come to you later or give your name to somebody else because of what personal relationship, you had during that process, and the trust. When we first opened, there's a gentleman who, again, we got to know his family and they had things at the space. He was a travel agent, joined on a Thursday, and on Monday or Tuesday of the next week, we went to like a B&I meeting, something like that. And we were sitting there and I introduced him, and somebody was talking about trust in your professional community in these days where we have 5,000 LinkedIn connections. And you're like, do you actually know this person?
Yeah. Right.
Or did you meet them at something, talk about, football, and then, you don't know them. They could be horrible to their customers, but
Right.
just know how to speak to you. And 4 days after Tom joined, I felt so comfortable talking to people and recommending him at this,
Right.
and bragging on him, because I had spent 4 days hearing him on the phone with
Right.
his customers,
Right.
and how he was, and how the lengths that he would go to get your money back for a tour that was horrible, or a hotel that didn't stand up to their end of, whatever that was.
He stood his ground, and then
And watching that, something you can't do at a networking meeting, and meeting people, I felt totally confident. And to this day, he does robotics things with his kids' schools.
Nice,
and things like that. And I'll recommend, it doesn't matter if it's as a travel agent or with his other, whatever it is, somebody says, Tom Ostrowski, I'm going to say go for it. Whatever it is, go for it.
because he stands by his words. He goes to any length.
Personally,
Awesome.
professionally, it's not about him, it's about the client.
Yeah, absolutely. Makes sense.
And I feel totally comfortable with that. And that's how I feel about most of the people. You don't wash your dishes in the break room.
Yeah.
That says
A lot
something
about you,
a lot about you.
Yeah.
And they do. And they take other people into consideration, and just that kind of how they interact with each other. And I see them with their clients. I see the kind of clients they have. We have this one lady, every person she has in to interview or train, they leave and they're hugging us. They're, this place is wonderful, and all of this sort of thing.
Right.
And that's who she attracts. And that's what we want in that, and I would feel comfortable recommending her to anybody because I see the type of people that she attracts.
Yeah, absolutely.
Absolutely.
So awesome. So what's the one thing that you wish more people knew? More people understood about co-working.
I think it's more than just a desk.
Yeah.
You know,
So it's beyond working.
beyond working, but also recognizing the things. And I think the longer you work from home, the more it sets in. Recognizing the things that you don't have when you're not in a corporate environment. Now, you don't have the commute, which is awesome. But having that water cooler talk, having somebody to bounce ideas off of, you know.
It makes a lot
at
of
least
difference,
once
yeah.
a day, I'm like, how do you spell da-da-da?
Yeah.
Or to proofread something for you, or
Yeah.
advice, or whatever it is. You don't have that when you're in. To see how your more successfully your Zoom calls or your presentations go when you're not worried about the cat crawling
Right.
on your desk. Once they really get in there and understand the work-life balance that they've gained by
Right.
doing it. And we always do a free day, because not only letting them try it, which first day is usually, I have a desk, I have an extra monitor, I got some free coffee, that sort
Yeah,
of thing.
makes
But they're
sense.
also seeing how others are interacting, and them coming saying, I need a private meeting room, or where can I take a nap?
Right.
Or you know, whatever it is. They see those people utilizing the resources and go, well, I didn't realize that was something that you guys could provide,
Right.
you know, physically or just supportively.
Right.
So I think that's one of the biggest things. Try it. And it may not be for everybody.
Yeah.
I've got some people that, you know, tried it for a while. Maybe it didn't work for them. Maybe they evolved, but they still use us as like a meeting,
resource, yeah.
a meeting space for interviews,
Yeah.
or bring me stuff. Monitors. I've never bought a monitor, because they'll just come in and go, do you need some tech? I have some tech. You know, and realizing that everybody's there for a different reason.
Yeah.
And you don't even realize what that is until you get in and you try it.
Makes sense. Yeah.
So,
Cool. So thank you for all the answers, but we're going to get into a new section called Rapid Fire.
okay.
Even though the name is Rapid Fire, you really don't need to answer it. In a
I am
minute
very
or so.
competitive. So.
So feel free to answer it. Take any as much time as you like. This is more about you. Are you an early bird or night owl?
Communication-wise, I'm an early bird. I talk in the morning.
The
Productivity, night.
night. Okay.
Because nobody's emailing you.
Yeah.
The dogs are asleep. You know, that sort of thing.
So what time do you work?
2:00 in the afternoon, I am worthless. So,
So you take your nap at that time?
oh yeah, that
Yeah, a little siesta.
yes.
It's cool. Favorite design trend of the past decade?
I don't believe in design trends.
Okay.
I believe in good design.
Yeah, good
And
design
that's
is, yeah.
and I had a professor that said, you can't teach people taste, but you can teach good design.
Yeah.
And how they facilitate that and manifest it might be different. But if it's good design, it's good design for them.
Cool.
Yeah.
Coffee or tea, or say soda?
Creamer.
Creamer.
I'm like, would you like some coffee with your creamer?
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
Okay. Coffee with your creamer. Okay. Nice. So you go with the creamer.
Oh, it's a
What's
little.
your
It's
favorite
it's a
one?
little intense. QT
QT.
coffee, Mighty Mocha. Yeah, it's
interesting.
got some kick to it, and it's like drinking chocolate. So,
One book that changed your life.
The Medici Effect.
Sorry?
The Medici Effect.
Okay.
by
Medici
Jo-
effect. Okay.
By Johansson.
Okay. Okay.
There
That's
are
another-
8 different colors of ink in the margins of that book from every time I've read it. And I read it the year that we were formulating
Oh, wow.
this. It is basically how, there are no new things in the world. It's always combining these two industries or these two solutions for something. And it's, there's a company that does fighter jets and somebody that studies, bird migration trends
Right.
and how they come together to come up with a solution that nobody would even introduce these two people.
The Medici effect.
The Medici effects. They were patrons. They
Wow.
brought people together. They facilitated people's creativity. Now, there was some, sketchy things going on in the family, but they did a lot to make the Renaissance happen, that sort of thing, and bringing people together that wouldn't normally be together.
Right.
And seeing what happens is just the coolest.
Yeah, profound. So what's your creative superpower?
Figuring out how to help somebody or to do something, whether that is jerry-rigging something, making things from scratch.
Right.
If we need a window seat in the space, I make a window seat. It's doing things with my hands. But specifically, like with the event spaces, somebody comes with some crazy idea for something, and just trying to figure out, with the spaces we have, with the furnishings we have, with the times that how can we do that? And it's not always the most logical or the first idea that you come up with, and trying to make that work so that I don't have to say no to somebody.
Yep, that makes sense. What's your biggest design pet peeve?
Designers that design for themselves and not the client, like all of those HGTV shows where they, spend 5 minutes with the client, go and come up with some whacked out
Templated design,
or we're going to glue pine straw to the walls, or some kind, something where they're just being creative for the sake of being creative and not thinking about the client, how to maintain the space, resale value, all of those sorts of things. They're just, what's going to make me look the most creative? Right. And anything having to do with PowerPoint layouts and fonts, I am extremely critical about that. And I will not listen to anything that you're saying because I'm focused on, issues with alignment. And I try to reel that in, but.
Cool. Mountains or beaches? And why?
A beach in a big city.
Beach in a big city.
Like Chicago.
Okay.
You got the big city, you got the history, you got all that, and then there's sand right there.
Cool. Most used app on your phone?
Ooh, Wanderlog, which is a trip planning. My best friend and I have at least 2 or 3, going on that we're either planning or, dream planning. Wanderlog is definitely one. And, I think that's probably the one, yeah.
Okay, cool. So what's your favorite way to unwind after a long day?
I run a bath, I get a glass of wine, I open Google, the page where it has totally algorithmed you, and open all the ones I'm interested in, all the tabs, and then go through them till I get all the tabs done. It gives me a time to, there's always some business stuff, there's always, funny cat videos. There's always, some. It's a little bit of everything, but I love how it's customized to me, and I'm not just randomly scrolling. Yeah. And I think that's my one time during the day to go into the real world and, and learn something.
Cool.
So
makes sense.
And laugh.
Very, very interesting. So, what's your dream destination for workcation?
Nothing. I don't believe in workations.
So you either vacations or work?
I used to, do Zoom tours in Cancun kind of thing. But I have an amazing manager at the space, and unless the building is burning down, she does not WhatsApp me, which is the only way we communicate when I'm on vacation. Because I'm not going to check my email. Everything's forwarded to her, and she is amazing.
Awesome.
So
most inspiring coworker that you have found at Loom?
Chris Jones. He is a realtor.
Shout out to Chris.
Shout out to Chris. And his brother Brian, but not as much. Realtor. started his own company. He's with Fathom Realty now. Was one of our very first members, the jolly funny guy, but always introducing himself. Was the first. He's the reason we have a podcast studio.
Oh wow! Okay.
The first 3 times, he had a podcast and these funny commercial kind of things that he did called the Jones Zone. And the first 3 times our private meeting room, our first one was used, was for recording something. And after about the 3rd time, you're like, maybe we need a podcast studio.
Yeah.
And it was for professional things like this, but also like the Rotary Club interviews for their scholarship.
Right.
Kind of thing.
So.
And that really drove that. He really drove the culture, playing basketball with Brittany outside. Attending everything, is one of the most amazing dads I have ever seen, and it's a priority. Community service as a background with like social services, so the most empathetic person you've ever met. And he's silver now, and it's just fabulous. And just over the last 9 years of watching him evolve. Like I said, his brother was in on a lot of his Jones Zone things. He brought so many interesting people into the space, doing his podcasts and just connecting. Unbelievable amount of followers on Facebook because everything he puts out there is
consumed.
Well, it's uplifting.
Yeah.
Educational, good networking, all of that, but uplifting.
Motivating.
And he's just a ray of sunshine.
Awesome. I'm so glad to know. I'll probably come and meet him one day.
Oh, you have to. You'll know it.
Jones Zone. Nice. Go to productivity hack.
I make 2 to-do lists.
2?
2. One is me, to keep myself on track, and one is Laurie, our manager, so that I can physically put down for my benefit what I'm handing over, and then I don't have to think about it. I can say, oh, okay, because she handles all the stuff I hate, the billing, the contracts, all of that. And when I'm there, a call will come in. It's something more. She handles the virtual memberships, all the mailing address stuff. I'll get everything. I'll, talk to the clients. I'll do all that, and then be on a Post-it note. I'll put it on her list, and that way I can concentrate on the things. I knew that I needed a manager when a member came up to talk about something, to ask for resources, and I kept typing while I was listening to them. And I said, I got to have some help, because my purpose is to drop what I'm doing and to help.
Yeah.
And when I couldn't do that, I brought her on, and now being able to A, let go of some stuff, and B, put things on her list to clear me up for the things that are I'm better at, than I am doing contracts. and things that fulfill me and things that help our community.
So she's been a blessing.
Oh my goodness, you have no idea. She said the other day she's giving her 6-year and 10-month notice because her husband will be retiring at that point. And I'm like, thank you for the heads up. I'll start medicating myself now.
You have 6 years and 10 month notice.
That's right.
That's amazing. What's always on your desk?
Super weird souvenirs from my best friend. My little ponies and things from our vacations. I have a drawer that faces that way that says stuff to borrow, because everybody takes everything off my desk.
Okay.
So I have a drawer with, the tape measure and the marker board markers and, the thing you clean your keyboard with, all of that kind of stuff. I'm like,
but facing that
it's
way.
right here. Yeah. So that, and a freakish amount of Post-it notes.
Post-it notes.
Yeah, because I love you do it.
Throw it, dump it.
Yeah,
cool.
the physical of that.
Right.
Yeah.
Cool. So if you were in this career, if you were not doing this, what would you be doing?
I love travel. I love the planning of travel.
Okay.
You know, my best friend will say, "Hey, what do you think about?" And she'll mention a place, and then like next morning, I've got a wander log set up, you know, with 7 top hotel. I've, you know, got it done. But I'd love to do it in the context of like helping students with study abroad. You know, because I saw the unbelievable difference. You know, a student that I have for several semesters, they go away for study abroad and they come back and they're like 5 years more mature.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
and never left South Carolina. And, you know, it just completely remakes them, their outlook there.
Yeah.
And my daughter is doing her second study abroad this summer. And so.
How old is she?
She has a year and 2 months left
You
in
left the
college.
Okay, with Clemson?
No.
Okay.
College of Charleston.
Okay.
And she is double majoring in arts management, studio art, with a minor in art history.
No, she
Is
falls
an
right in.
ambassador on campus, like giving tours and that sort of thing, and is interviewing, applying right now for an internship with a cultural center
Okay.
there. So,
Makes sense.
but I love totally living my life vicariously through her, and you know, the older I get, ironically, the more that we're traveling. We travel with her from the time she was 4 months old, you know, so it's second nature to
Yeah.
her. And I'd love to be able to kind of instill that in
Makes sense,
a
yeah.
lot of people. So, yeah.
Cool. Your favorite quote or mantra?
Pronto a tutto.
Pronto tutto.
It's Italian for ready for anything.
Ready for anything. Are you Italian?
No,
Cool.
but I had an Italian friend
Okay.
that like met me, and by the end of the evening was like,
Yeah.
that's what I'm giving you.
For mine is like I like the scout stuff that they do. I think what's it called? Always be prepared. Yeah.
Something like that. Yeah.
Yeah, correct. Yeah, it's pretty
That and anything from Ted Lasso.
cool. Okay.
The quote at the bottom of my signature is like trying something new is like riding a horse. If you're comfortable doing it, you're not doing it right. So, yeah.
Always be uncomfortable.
Always be uncomfortable.
Cool. Your first job ever?
Teaching circus and clowning skills.
Teaching circus.
Yes.
When was that?
I was 14,
90s?
15,
Uh-huh.
80s, and taught dance, but there was a place that I took from when I was younger, and tumbling, pantomiming, summer camp kind of things, and
Right.
an occasional clown costume. So, and if I said that has not come in handy, I would be lying. So, because sometimes you just gotta.
What's the most challenging part of you being your own boss?
Letting go. I'm much better at it now.
Yeah, that's something most of us have to learn. Yeah.
It was interesting. I taught a couple of adjunct classes last year, and building codes, as exciting as that sounds, I totally geek out on building codes. And it required me to leave work 2 days a week in the afternoon and let go because I was in class, couldn't answer my phone, couldn't, you know. And that was such a great way to kind of start leaving the nest,
Right.
and letting Laurie do what she's great at.
Right.
And I'm not adjunct teaching now, but I have the ability to zip my backpack and and so that was a great way to tippy toe into letting go.
Right.
Yeah.
That makes sense. One piece of tech that you cannot live without.
A website, LinkedIn.
LinkedIn. Yeah.
I've always paid for the premium
Yeah. Sales Navigator.
because every day somebody comes to my desk and says, "Who do you know that?" And even if I don't know them personally, I look at who the connections are. And if those connections are all people that I trust, that I would refer somebody to that
Right.
kind of has a similar mindset, then there's that connection.
Awesome.
Had someone call about to get a reference, just kind of a cold
Yeah.
call reference, for somebody that I was connected with on LinkedIn, but I didn't really know. But I looked it up, and one of our very first virtual members, who is just, again, a ray of sunshine, was connected with them.
To that person, okay.
And so I connected that cold call person to Zach and said, okay, I'm not your best resource for this, but I trust this guy
Right.
to give you, an appropriate reference, good, bad, or whatever. And every day there's something, professionally or personally or whatever, or past students, that sort of thing. And yeah, there's no way I can't remember that many people and what they do. And you don't know.
Yeah, absolutely.
You don't know till you keyword something, and then you're like, I had no idea that person, blah, 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 or went to that school or whatever.
Cool. Your favorite local business in Fort Mill?
It just changed.
Okay.
Their business just changed. Z Bakery.
Oh yeah, love them.
Confederate.
Oh, yeah.
They closed their physical facility,
Okay.
but have started. It's called Off Z Griddle.
Office and Griddle.
Off Z Griddle.
Off Z Griddle.
Yeah,
Okay.
Zimmerman is
Yeah,
their
yeah,
last
yeah,
name,
yeah.
and so it's food truck,
Yeah.
mobile catering, that sort of thing, and for years, like that was Friday. Handful of people, you go, somebody at every single table, and even if you don't, by the time you leave, you do. Mother and daughter own it.
Right.
Family. There was one time a water main burst over on Confederate. We weren't affected, they were. You don't have water, you can't run a restaurant.
Yeah, right.
And they had a huge group coming in for catering, and we didn't have anything going on in the studio that day. She picked up, she had so many bottles of water, you have no idea. Brought everything, set it up, had the luncheon. It was like a garden club or something, but again, she was able to be creative
Yeah.
and
absolutely.
solve
The problem.
and meet her clients' needs. And on the flip side of that, we had a water main thing, and my people had nowhere to go to the bathroom.
Sure.
And so, I'm calling Trina going, and so there's just that, and referrals for
Yeah.
catering in our event spaces and that sort of thing. But just they're tied to the community. They're, during COVID, they fed first responders for free.
Wow.
I mean, just that kind
It's
of
just
thing.
amazing,
And
yeah.
it's not something that was expected. It was just, this is what a good
Beyond the
community.
call of duty. Yeah.
Totally. So,
Okay.
off Z Griddle.
Shout out to
Shout out.
Yeah. Cool. 3 words that describe your work style.
These aren't really 3 words, but 100% and 10%. And what I mean by that is, like, when I'm trying to tackle something, I try to do it 100%, hopefully being able to let something go. But when I'm not, I want the rest of my brain, the 90%, to be available to be distracted by something, because if I'm constantly in the zone working,
Right.
I'm not doing that creative eavesdropping. I'm not observing people doing something. People wandering around in our parking lot because they're lost, go out there and see what they need,
Yeah, absolutely.
and so it's trying not to kind of straddle that fence. Do it
Right.
or don't, and make yourself accessible. That's kind of how I like to do
Cool.
it.
So one last question. Is there anything that you want to say about yourself or Loom Co-working that you want to talk about today that I haven't asked, or I've missed asking?
I would just say that it's a process. It's a continual process. Just when you think you go in any business, just when you get comfortable, then you need to start looking for
Right.
what needs fixing, you know,
Right.
and that it is, you know, it's an evolution, and not to sit on your laurels
Yeah.
and think you got it, because as soon as you say that,
Don't be complacent. Yeah.
COVID happens, or something else, and all the arts funding that is being cut. We work with Art Pop, the billboards that have the fine art on it. We've had 20 of their artists over the years have gallery exhibits for 3-4 months, and they do such amazing things for getting exposure to artists, things like that. Well, their funding has been just decimated, and a lot of organizations with everything that's been happening have had that situation, and kind of keeping that always in the back of my mind that, you know, yeah, things are going great, but I can't get complacent.
Yeah.
And there's always going to be challenges, and when we're doing good, that means we can help somebody else.
Absolutely.
And on the flip side of that, when
Yeah.
I'm struggling to find artists to place or whatever, they're the first people I call, you know, and that it's a process. And when you get comfortable, that's when you gotta, again, shake that Etch-a-Sketch and figure out what you can now do better.
Yep.
So,
Absolutely. Jennifer, it's been a pleasure. Thank you for coming
Thank
to
you
us.
for having me.
Yeah, pleasure. And you know, I would love to have several other conversations with you. Maybe we'll just deep dive into some of the other things later on. But today,
And if you ever need people for your podcast, we
absolutely,
can
yeah.
always refer people to you.
yeah, absolutely would love to, because we're trying to promote local businesses, and I usually do it on Thursdays and Fridays. If you have someone, just ask them to
Certainly
reach out
will.
to me. Yeah,
Certainly
I would love to. It's been a pleasure. And
Thank
you for joining us.
I appreciate it.
Yeah. Hey, what a great show we had with Jennifer. You know, she talked about her background, her story, how she's combined her architectural background and then brought her creative space to the Loom Co-working that she's created, and some of the amazing camaraderie that happened in the space before COVID, after COVID, and with multiple personalities, multiple experiences. That was just an amazing story. I hope you really liked it, and I hope you continue to enjoy these great entrepreneurial stories that we bring you to. So tune into the next spotlight. We have some some more interesting guests, and keep tuning in. Have a good one.